Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy has found, plenty of anti-government activists and pundits.
A lot of people from all over the country have gone there, in fact, because I've heard it's about freedom.
Right.
I've heard this. I've heard that having a right that no other rancher in America has is this one rancher's God-given right.
Right.
Because of the Constitution of the United States.
Okay.
Actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Willie, I'm not good on this.
Help us out, Will.
You go to the Federalist Papers. Is it 14 or 37 where James Madison actually inscribes the Bundy family's name into the Federalist Papers? Could you tell me? Because I really don't know.
Very specific about that. Here's all you need to know about that. Here's a quote from Mr. Bundy. I abide by all Nevada state laws, but I do not recognize the United States government as even existing.
And this is as even existing. This is a man. Mika, some self-described conservatives, I said a week or two ago, there's nothing conservative about this man, have embraced.
No.
And this is where nihilism against the federal government as the basis of your ideology gets you in trouble every time. Well, I'm not going to even draw parallels. There was another figure, though, that a lot of so-called conservatives raced to a year or two ago, and then it ends up he gets arrested 3 or 4 more times for
it's the kind of conservatism
beating up girlfriends and wives.
Undermines everything
allegedly.
That conservatives should be about.
Supposedly stand for.
But new comments by Bundy in a front-page story in the New York Times will undoubtedly leave some of his supporters with buyer's remorse if they have even half of a pea in their brain. Bundy, of course, is the rancher who refused to pay the government more than $1 million in grazing fees for using federal lands. His defiance attracted the attention of anti-government activists, and armed militias have come to his defense. After a tense standoff, the Bureau of Land Management eventually backed off a court order to confiscate his cattle. With steady coverage in the conservative media, Bundy has used the attention to hold daily news conferences to discuss his views on government overreach, welfare, and race. And according to the Times, this is a front-page story today. In a recent talk, Bundy launched into a tirade on African-American families, using a racial slur and adding, quote, this. They were basically on government subsidy. So now what do? They abort their young children. They put their young men in jail because they never learned how to pick cotton. And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves, picking cotton and having a family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy? They didn't get no more freedom. They got less freedom.
This is more like
I have a few more. Would you like me to read them?
Do we give the guy the time?
But there are defenders of this person.
This guy is more like the Branch Davidians than he is.
Right.
So
what
this
do
is a whack job.
But Michael Crowley, the bigger problem is here, and I understand I risk actually, despite the blatant racism here, being hammered for being the only conservative, self-described conservative on set, talking about this, but I'm going to talk about it. This has happened before. It happened when conservatives raced blindly to put their arms around George Zimmerman, a man who they didn't realize who gets in all these troubles because of they basically pick their friends based on who their, quote, friends' enemies are. And here in this case, you have a lot of people in conservative media that have so-called, and I put that in quotation marks, that have raced to this guy's defense. And they must be feeling very exposed this morning.
Well, they deserve what they get. I mean, it was so obvious that this guy was unhinged and not somebody who should be elevated and celebrated. I mean, he's obviously a nut, and those quotes are despicable. They really, I feel like we're also jaded now. You hear kind of some variation of everything these days, but still, that really turned my stomach. But, you know, guys like this, and it's the same thing with Ted Nugent, are doing a favor to the left and doing a favor to the Democrats to the extent that there are interesting, intellectually credible strains of conservative thought about limits of government authority. People like this get associated with them, completely discredit them, and make them look ridiculous. Joe, you remember the mid-1990s. Those House Republicans suffered dearly from the way Bill Clinton and the Democrats were able to link Gingrich and some of your colleagues to the militia nuts out west and characters like the Branch Davidians, and it was devastating. And I'm not saying that mainstream Washington conservatives have anything really to do with this guy. I'm saying that to the extent that conservative media and some conservative activists have elevated him, it was a huge mistake, and they are going to deserve what they're getting.
Given that, Joe, because he's gotten so much sympathy and defense from really high-profile people, if they don't dial that back today and completely reject this man and everything he stands for, what does that say about them?
Well, it'll be up to their audience to decide that. I've got to say, though, Michael brings up a great point. There are a lot of extraordinarily credible, conservative, small government, libertarian voices to go to. You can read the works of Hayek. You can go back and reread William F. Buckley. You can look at Rand Paul. You've got a presidential campaign if you want to follow with Rand Paul. There's no need to go blindly in to championing the cause of somebody like this, who we didn't certainly know he was a racist, but we did know one thing, Willie. We know that this guy, and Eric Erickson, a couple weeks ago, I loved it and I retweeted it. Eric Erickson said, there must be something I don't understand in this Bundy case, because isn't he using land that he hasn't paid for, that he has no right for? And Eric Erickson, like myself, like a lot of other small government conservatives, what are we about? We're about property rights. We talk about property rights all the time. There is something, in fact, if you go back to, you know, small government conservatism, the idea of property, personal property, is one of the most important things. And really here, this guy, talking about welfare, this guy wanted a free ride off the government, off the rest of us, and for some reason, some self-described conservatives left people like Eric Erickson and myself scratching our heads going, wait a second, this guy's getting a free ride.
Well, when you start with there is no federal government, he believes that land belonged to everyone, that belonged to him, it belonged to the people.
Sounds like communism to me, Willie.
Well, that's, and by the way,
it sounds like communism.
He and his supporters are declaring victory. They say the federal government,
the federal
government backed down. We ran them out of here. There's a quote in here from his son who says, now they know we were serious, we weren't playing around. You talked about Republicans being careful running to him. Senator Dean Heller has called his supporters patriots, but he did come out in this New York Times piece and completely reject the comments that Mika just read from Mr. Bundy.
Oh my gosh,
we've
so much to get
from Rand Paul as well. I think this does put, like you say, Joe, a spotlight on those conservative politicians with national ambitions.
This is a huge gift to us because it falls into this stereotype that a lot of people already have about Republicans, and it's not fair. What happens is the media always picks up the most extreme example, whether it's the left or the right. This is an extreme example, and the right wing fell right into the trap that was set by Bundy.
Wait, you say the right wing. Some people. There were a lot of us.
No, the far right.
There are a lot of stuff. And you know, Jazz Shaw came on. We had Jazz on, and I were going back and forth, and he said, hey, there may have been a better way for the government to handle this when they had the confrontation, but this guy's completely wrong on grazing fees. That's hot air. They said they distanced themselves from it. Eric Erickson with the Red State, one of the most conservative people.
This guy's basically a guy who doesn't pay his taxes. That's what he is.
Yeah, well, again, he's a freeloader. And by the way, when you say everybody owns everything, I'm sorry, Howard, you may understand this philosophy more than me. This sounds like socialism. That's socialism.
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, maybe this guy should move to Vermont and vote for Bernie Sanders.
Should we all go camp on that federal land and say what his followers say about that?
Yeah.